Hi, and welcome to another episode of My Solo Chronicles. Of course, you know who this is. This is April, and today I'm sharing another one of my solo outings. With this outing, it was unexpected twists to moments of self discovery. And this outing taught me a lot, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. So let's get started. Again, welcome everyone. I want to tell you so much about this outing that I took to Adachi Museum of Art. I finally got to go after being here since March, and with everyone telling me, from my coworkers to students, saying, "Oh, you have to go to Adachi Museum of Art," because I love museums. And just a side note, sorry if you hear humming in the background. I got the air conditioner going. It's been tremendously hot here in Japan. I mean, really hot. I've always heard about Japan's like summers and how brutal they can be. Well, now I'm experiencing it. So the humming in the background is my air conditioner. Apologize in advance. Anyways, I thought California heat was crazy. This is insane. I feel like I'm literally walking through hell. But that's a whole nother story right there. We don't need to get into that because I'm going to tell you again about my outing to Adachi Museum of Art. Now, when I started teaching in the schools, of course, you have to give a self introduction about who you are, where you're from, and everything. And I shared one in part of my introduction that I enjoy museums. I do not care where I'm at. I'm always going to try to search out museums. I love art. I'm not a big researcher of art. I just like going to museums and just seeing how these artists were able to just create this masterpiece that's hanging in this building. So I mentioned that, and instantly, from like day one, everyone has been asking me, "Have you got a chance to go to Adachi Museum of Art?" And I would always say, "No, not yet," because I was always doing something else. This museum was not at the top of my list to do, but I knew eventually I was going to go and visit. I just didn't know exactly when. Well, I got a chance to go. And just to go back a little bit, I had mentioned to some other people that are, teachers as well, or foreign ALTs is what they call us. And I had mentioned about wanting to go to this museum because I've been hearing so much about it. And it's not too far from me, but I could never figure out, okay, where exactly is it? You know, where I'm at, it's not a huge, little rural city. It's very small. So I'm just like, have I driven past it before? I don't remember ever seeing it. And one of the persons was like, you really shouldn't waste your time because there's not really much to look at. You go in, you walk around, you see it, and you're out. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, thanks for the tip. Here's the thing about me and when people give me tips, especially if it's veering towards the negative part of something, I tend not to listen because I have always been under the notion that you can get people's feedback of how something is or how a place is, but until you experience it yourself, you really can't come to the final result of this place is not worth it. You know what I'm saying? So I took what he said with a grain of salt, but in the back of my mind, I was still saying, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. Well, I decided to go on one of the hottest days in the damn year. So I ended up going. And I'm thinking I'm going to go before it gets really crowded. It was on a Saturday, actually a few Saturdays back. And I wanted to go before it gets mad crazy packed because again, it's the weekend. And not that I don't like being around people. I just like when it comes to a museum, I like to really take my time and not have to rush through seeing stuff because there's a bunch of people trying to see the exact same thing. And I got there and well, It wasn't empty. Let's just say that. People were starting to show up. I got to the museum close to about 10:30, a little before 11, and you seen buses because big groups were coming in or they were already there. The parking lot was semi full, and I'm just thinking, okay, I guess I timed this pretty wrong, but whatever. I'm coming for one thing and one thing only. I'm not going to interfere with people trying to come and see the exact same thing I'm trying to see, and they're not going to interfere with me. So, with that being said, I ended up going to the first building. It's like the main building of the museum that you're going to go and get your ticket and everything like that. Now, I will say, when I tell you the price, most people are going to say, "Wow, that's expensive." But if you really, if you convert the yen to the U.S., it wasn't that expensive. So I paid 2,400 yen for one ticket to get in, and I could pretty much with that ticket not only go into the main building, but I was able to go into another building that wasn't attached to the main building. I'm gonna tell you about that in a little bit because I ended up going into that second building by mistake, following other people. It never fails. I'm always following other people. You make eye contact with me, I'm gonna follow you. So I get there, and as you walk in, or as you're walking up to the stairs to the main building, you come across, it's called the entrance garden. So I took notes, so I'm actually going to be reading from my notes. But the entrance garden is where you walk in to the main building, or you're going to the main building. And it was so perfectly manicured. I was just blown away by the beauty of looking at how these trees and the sand or gravel was just so immaculate. Again, it was just like, wow. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I picked my chin up off the ground. That's how much I was just in awe of this place. And this was just the beginning. I hadn't gotten my ticket yet. So once you go in, um, I like with this museum, there's a route and there's signs to take you through the whole entire museum, but in a route. So it's almost like you're not just running into people as they're going in the opposite direction of where you may be going. And that's one of the things I really liked. And when you get your ticket and you go through the ticket counter, the first thing you come across is the Moss Garden. And I was in awe again. You're going to probably hear me say in awe several times throughout this episode, but I was in awe. And it's described as this graceful garden that's arranged in the Kyoto style, mainly using hair cap moss. I don't exactly know what hair cap moss are, but I guess it's the trees. And it says the contrast is beautiful between white gravel and the greenery of the moss, which is mildly curved. In autumn, the red color of maple trees is added. And of course, you're looking out. And here's the thing, too. I just want to say this really quick. The one thing about the Adachi Museum of Art, if you've never been there, like I had never been there, this is my first time being there, you cannot walk through these gardens. You're actually in the building looking out of windows, literally into the lush greenery of the whole entire nature area. So as you're going through, passing the first part, which is the moss garden, you come across the dark landscape garden. And this is where you're looking completely out at tons of just like mountains everywhere. I feel like I had just went back in history. It was just so beautiful. And with the dry landscape garden, it says that this is the museum's main garden, which shows a beautiful harmony with nature, which it actually did. It really did. I mean, I had never seen so much greenery in all of my days on this earth. That was a lot of greenery. And it says the standing stone is arranged as like a steep mountain, given the impression of water flowing into a large, mighty river. And it was beautiful. And as you're looking out of the window, it's almost like you're take when you take your picture and you actually look at it, it feels almost like you were actually out there in that garden. It was just picturesque. Then there's the living framed painting. And it's not a painting. It looks as though you literally just snapped a picture of a picture, if that makes sense. And what that is with the living framed painting, it's a window itself that has become a frame of a living picture. Like I said, it's almost like you took a picture of a picture. And this is created by nature, changing itself in accordance with light and shades. Then we have to, I'm going to try to pronounce this word, bear with me. It's called the Kikaku waterfall. Now, when I seen this waterfall surrounded by mountains and trees, I fell in love. I think I stayed more at this area than I did any other area within the museum because it was the waterfall that got me, literally. And this is an artificial waterfall of 15 meters in height, which was made under an image of Taiken's Subokuga work, which was called Waterfall in Nachi. The lively falling water gives the garden a sense of motion and intensity, and it was beautiful. But you got to really be paying attention, because if you just walk past and you snap your picture, you won't see it. That's just how in tune you really have to be with this Kakaiku waterfall. Then you walk through what's called the pond garden, and this is where you see the koi fish, and they were so cute. And also, there's a cafe that's right there as well, where you could stop and have coffee, or you can grab lunch. But you're looking out onto the pond garden, and this is arranged with a new sensibility and a traditional gardening manner. The elegantly swimming carp give the viewer a feeling of ease, and I felt so at ease. I felt so peaceful. I felt so peaceful just walking through this museum, this part of the museum, because everything was so quiet. You didn't hear nobody yelling. You didn't hear nobody talking loud. It was just, I felt at ease, and that makes a good point. And then, as you go through the museum, there's actually two parts where you could take pictures, and it looks as though, again, you're taking pictures of a picture. And one of the parts is called the living hanging scroll. And what that is, it's a window it's a part. You look like you're looking into somebody's older Japanese style home, and there's a window that's cut, and as you're looking out of that window, you can't actually physically walk in, but you can actually just stand there. And you've seen a lot of people lining up to take pictures. You're looking out this window, and it looks as though you just took pictures of this beautiful landscape that's outside of this window. And that was just, it was amazing. Like I said, you had to really be quick about it. I think that's the only time I felt rushed, is because people were lining up to take pictures. And then another beautiful part, and this is where you can see the entire landscape of these gardens. It's called the White Gravel and Pine Garden. And this is where you see everything. Now, if you want to get a really good shot, and this is the place to be towards the end, because you literally walk out on like a patio looking area, and you can just look across the whole entire landscape. And it's called The Atmosphere of Beautiful Pine Beach, a masterpiece by Yokoyama Taikan, is expressed in a delicate manner in this garden. black pines in the right side and red pines in the left, which are arranged in contrast to each other, successfully create harmonious beauty. And that it did. And that's kind of the white gravel and pine garden is the last of the gardens before you actually head further upstairs into the building to now look at artwork. And the artwork, oh, okay, first things first. And this is a little funny sidetrack. So they tell you you can take pictures, but when there's like Japanese artifacts that are along like some of the hallways when you're walking, they tell you you can't take pictures. And with those artifacts, you can see a sign just as plain as day that says no pictures. Like they have the camera and they have a red line through it and said no taking pictures. I get that. And I think that's one of the reasons why when I posted up on Instagram, I can only post the gardens because I couldn't take pictures of like the art that was on the wall or the Japanese artifacts that were in glass. So I'm walking past, and by this time, like I said, it was starting to really get crowded. Um, I noticed that all these people were like stopped, but they were kind of turned like looking over their shoulders. And I'm thinking, okay, what has happened? Is somebody famous here or is something going on? You had this clown, and that's what I'm going to call him. You have this clown snapping pictures just like he on a family vacation. All you hear is click, 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 click. And I'm walking past and I turn and I'm looking over my shoulders like, dude, you do know that very elegant, beautiful looking old style Japanese cabinet from, I couldn't even remember what era it was from. You know, it says you can't take pictures. And he's just clicking away. So I think he realized that, okay, I'm being stared at and I'm getting these evil eyes from people. And you see him just kind of like slowly bring his camera down, and he kind of tucks it under his arm and walks away. It's like, yeah, you're moron. You're not even supposed to be doing that. So yeah, that was something just hilarious to me. I was like, some people just don't pay attention. I mean, the picture of the camera with the red line through it, it's a universal sign that you can't be taking pictures. So yeah. So anyway, so I head up into the second level of the museum where you can now see artwork. I mean legit artwork. And I felt like I had stepped into the National Gallery back in London. The only difference is when I tell you it was quiet as hell, it was quiet. I felt like I was in a library. I sneezed and it was like a achoo. 'Cause, you know, it was just so quiet in there. But I enjoyed it because as you're walking through, always think if you're going to do artwork, if you're not talking about the art, then just walk through and just silently just look at the beauty of what's in front of you. And each piece, because each area there was a theme, because there were different exhibits that were going on when I went. You just go and I notice, and this is just me, anybody else who has been there might say differently. I noticed that whatever room I was in and the art that was in there, that art, piece by piece by piece by piece, was telling a story of Japan back in that time. So if you were in a room where the artist had been painting, different parts about Japan back in 1506. I'm just throwing a date out there, like 1506. Each piece that was in that room represented what was going on during that time. And I was standing and I was watching one piece. There was one particular art piece that caught my, actually there were several, but this one particular art piece that caught my attention. It was a painting that was done, I want to say early 1900s or late 1800s, and it's showing school kids, a bunch of girls. They're dressed in their Japanese school uniforms, and they're just standing around, but the color and the expressions on their face was just, it drew you in. I stood there for a while, and I tried to read as much of the background as I could, because like I said, there were people that was, it was just people, a lot of people everywhere. But I just stood there and I said, wow, if I could have taken a picture of that, I would have. And then there was another piece, and I felt like I felt like I was being looked at through this art piece, but it was beautiful though. It, when you're walking up on it, it's all red. Literally, at least it looks like it's completely red, and there's nothing there. You could kind of see definitions of maybe tree leaves or something like that, but nothing that would just catch your eye. And as I walk up to it and I'm standing there and I'm really taking in what I'm looking at, all of a sudden I start seeing these faces of women just coming through the redness of this artwork. And I kind of look around like, hold up, am I hallucinating? Because you don't see it as you're walking up to it. You know what I'm saying? So I was just like, wait a minute, there's people in this painting. And that was one of the pieces that I actually liked too. And then there was parts where they took pictures of, there was one room where you had art. It wasn't painting, but it was like photographs, but it was blown up where you could see what the old Japanese trains look like on the tracks. You see a before and after. It like I said, every room where there was an artist, those art pieces told a story, and you kind of could pick up on it. And this was a part where the majority of the art was in Japanese, and there was an English translation, but you didn't need English translation to realize what the artwork was trying to convey to you. Once I finished in the main building, now I'm trying to head out. I actually went into the gift shop, and stuff was mad crazy expensive. I said, yep, April, don't touch nothing, because if you break something, you ain't got the money to pay for this. I ended up um, looking for the exit, and it was these three gentlemen who I had passed them previously, and one of the gentlemen was saying to me through Google Translate. He noticed how I wasn't rushing through, how I was actually taking the time to really read what I was seeing. And he says, "Oh, you must be an art lover." Now, mind you, all this is going through Google Translate. And I said to him, I wouldn't say that I'm an art lover, but I do like museums and I do like coming to see art. And he was just fascinated by how I was just so, I was just casually taking my time and not rushing. So I ended up seeing these guys again, and they were going out and I'm going out, and we go. I actually found this out like right when I got to the second building. So we go down these stairs because we seen two other people go down these same stairs. And you get to the very lower level, and we're thinking, oh, okay, this is the way to kind of shuffle you out. Because remember, I told you, you following a route, and that route is eventually going to take you out towards the exit. So we go to it's called the underground passage to the annex building. And I'm thinking, okay, well, it's gonna take us underground, but then take us back upstairs and put us in the main building to the doors, and then we just walk out, and then that's it. We walk this long, long underground passage. We finally get to these stairs. We go up these stairs. We come out of the staircase. We walk into the annex building, and I look out the window and I said, wait a minute. I was in that building across the street. Why am I in this building? Lord, well, I found out that the underground passage hallway, it takes you from one building to the next so that you don't have to go out of the main building, cross the street, and then come back in to the annex building. So I was just like, wow, that's such a genius move right there. But we were so confused. We looked lost. But when you come into the annex building, you have the main floor where there's more art, and then you go upstairs, and then there's even more art. Altogether, I think I spent over 2 hours at the Adachi Museum of Art. I met some nice people. This time I didn't gate crash a group. I actually didn't. Um, Even though there was language barrier between me and the people that I met, we still were able to communicate. And I would say this is probably the first time in a while since I've been here that I actually used my Google Translate. And I left there with a sense of just calmness, of ease, and just proud that I didn't listen to someone saying, "Oh, you don't want to do this because you're not going to have any fun." I mean, there's nothing really there. I'm glad I didn't listen to that person, and I took it upon myself to go and just see what this museum had to offer. And it offered a lot. Not only, like I said, not only like just the calmness, but that sense of like peace. But also, I walked away understanding a little bit more about Japanese history. And this visit was so worth that. So that is it. That is the story of my outing, finally, to Adachi Museum of Art. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to talking to you in the next episode. And as I always say, my moonbeams, have a great rest of the day. Bye.